The hedgerow smelled like cut grass and diesel. Inside the Sherman, the loader's hands weren't steady. Couldn't be. Not with what was coming down that lane. The commander watched through his periscope, counted silently. 1, 2, 3 Panthers nosing around the bend, 800 meters out, about 875 yards. 4, 5. Emerging from the tree line in a staggered column, close enough to see the crosses on their hulls. The long barrel of the 17-pounder tracked left, half a degree, less. Hold. The gunner's finger rested on the trigger. Sweat ran into his eyes. He didn't blink. 5 Panthers. 1 gun, 12 minutes. And a single rule that would determine who lived and who burned: don't miss. This is the story they didn't want told after the war. Not because it was secret, because it complicated the narrative. The Sherman was supposed to be a death trap. Undergunned, under-armored, burning crews alive while Panther shells punched through from a mile away. The veterans groups said it. The historians repeated it. Hollywood made it gospel. But on a morning in Normandy, 12 minutes told a different story. We're going to show you what actually happened in a lane near Lingèvres. How one Firefly crew, in a tank the Germans specifically hunted, turned the myth inside out. 5 Panthers destroyed. And the engagement that proved the Sherman Panther matchup was never about specifications. It was about who saw whom first, and who didn't miss. By mid-June 1944, the invasion had stalled. The beaches were secure, but the breakout everyone expected wasn't happening. The bocage, ancient hedgerow country, saw some of those earthen banks, older than England's kings, had turned into a killing ground. Every field was a fortress, every lane an ambush site. British armor bled for yards, not miles. And then the Panthers arrived. The Panzer V Panther was Germany's answer to the T-34 shock of 1941. Sloped frontal armor, 80 millimeters at 55 degrees, over 3 inches of angled steel, effectively thicker than a Tiger's flat plate. A high-velocity 75 millimeter KWK, 42 gun, about 3 inches of bore, that could kill a Sherman from 2,000 meters. Well over a mile. On paper, it was the best medium tank of the war. The problem was the paper. Panther crews couldn't see through their periscopes in rain. The final drives broke down every 150 kilometers, about 93 miles. The side armor, 40 millimeters. Barely an inch and a half, nearly vertical, might as well have been a suggestion. And in the close country of Normandy, 2,000-meter engagement ranges didn't exist. The British knew this. By June 1944, they'd fielded their answer, the Sherman Firefly. They took the American Sherman, reliable, mobile, undergunned, and they broke it. Cut a hole in the back of the turret to fit the recoil mechanism. Turned the radio sideways. Crammed in a massive 17-pounder anti-tank gun that had no business being in that chassis. The 17-pounder could penetrate 140 millimeters of armor, 5.5 inches, at 500 meters, roughly 550 yards. The Panther's frontal plate was equivalent to roughly 130 millimeters of vertical steel, just over 5 inches. Tight margins. But margins. The Germans figured this out fast. Standing orders went to Panther and Tiger commanders: identify the Fireflies first. Kill them before engaging anything else. Look for the longer barrel, the muzzle brake, the subtle differences that meant you live or you die. British crews responded by painting their barrels to look shorter, wrapping the muzzle brake in burlap, hiding the one advantage they had. If you watched our Aracord episode, you know what happened when American Shermans met Panthers in the fog of Lorraine 3 months later. Close the range, negate the advantage, fire first. At Aracord, fog closed the range. At Lingèvres, it was the hedgerows themselves. The position had been established at 0600 hours. Hull down behind a collapsed barn, engine off, the Firefly had clear sightlines down 400 meters of lane, roughly 440 yards. Beyond that, the hedgerows swallowed everything. Sound, sight, certainty. The crew had been sitting in a metal box since dawn. June heat pressing down on the armor. The turret smelled like oil and sweat, and the faint chemical tang of the shells racked beside the loader's knee. 8 hours of watching nothing. The commander checked his watch, checked the lane, checked his watch again. The radio was silent. The birds weren't. Veterans always mention the birds. They mention the ordinary sounds that fill the space right before the air splits open. At 14:35 hours, the ground started to vibrate, not a metaphor. 45 tons of steel, nearly 50 US tons, moving at speed creates a seismic signature you feel in your teeth. The gunner traversed the turret by hand. No power, no noise. The 17-pounder's barrel moved inches at a time. The loader chambered an armor-piercing round. 17 kilograms of brass and tungsten, about 37 pounds, rammed home in silence. Nobody spoke. The rules were simple. Don't move. Don't fire until the commander gives the word. And the commander wasn't giving the word until he could count the rivets on German armor. At 800 meters, and just under half a mile, the first Panther rounded the bend. It moved with that distinct, heavy metal confidence German armor carried in 1944. Commander's hatch open. Scanning hedgerows, hunting. Behind it, 4 more Panthers emerged in a staggered column. Standard advance formation, textbook. They didn't see the gun barrel in the vegetation. The muzzle brake was wrapped in burlap, breaking up its outline. The Sherman's hull sat below the crest of the hedgerow bank, invisible from ground level. 800 meters. Too far. The shot had to be certain. Hold. 600 meters. The lead Panther stopped. The commander had seen something. A glint of metal movement in the hedgerow. His turret began to traverse, slowly, searching. Hold. 500 meters. The turret was still scanning, not locked on, not yet. Hold. 400 meters. The Panther's gun was pointing 90 degrees away. Something in the opposite hedgerow, in a British infantry position, had drawn its attention. Exhale. Fire. The 17-pounder doesn't go bang. It cracks. A sharp, violent overpressure that rattles your skull and compresses your chest. The first round crossed 400 meters, about 440 yards, in less than half a second. It struck the lead Panther in the side turret. 45 millimeters of armor, under 2 inches, no slope. The tank shuddered, stopped. Black smoke poured from the hatches before the crew could react. Inside the Firefly, the breech block slammed open, ejecting the smoking brass casing onto the floor plates. The loader's hands moved automatically, muscle memory from 100 practice drills. He rammed the next shell home. Up! Second target! Lane! The second Panther's driver panicked, tried to reverse. The lane was too narrow. The tank slewed sideways, blocking the column behind it. Fire! The round hit the side hull. 40 millimeters of armor, 1.5 inches. That might as well have been cardboard at this range. The shell penetrated cleanly, detonated inside. That tank exploded. The turret lifted 6 inches before slamming back down. 2 Panthers dead. The commander didn't count. He was already looking for the third. But the third Panther's commander had understood. His turret was traversing toward the barn, and he was fast. Third target, fire! The shot was rushed. The gunner didn't have the picture he wanted. The round slammed into the hedgerow bank 2 meters left of the Panther, about 6 feet, showering it with earth and stone. Miss. The word hung in the turret like a death sentence. The loader, hands slick with sweat, forearms already burned from hot brass, wrestled the next shell into the breech. The turret space was too small for the 17-pounder. It had never been designed for this gun. His knuckles scraped against the breech ring. He didn't feel it. Up! He screamed. The Panther fired. The high-velocity 75mm round, 3 inches of German engineering, passed over the Firefly's turret. Close enough that the crew felt the shockwave press against the hatch. Close enough that the air displacement alone rang the hull like a bell. 6 inches lower, 15 centimeters, and there would be no story to tell. The gunner adjusted. The sight picture steadied. Fire! The round hit the third Panther in the gun mantlet. The tank stopped dead. Engine still running, a sealed metal coffin. 3 Panthers. Under a minute. But there were still 2 more, and now they knew exactly where the gun was. The 4th Panther was trying to push past the burning wrecks. The lane was choked with smoke and debris. The driver couldn't see. The commander was standing in his cupola, screaming directions, audible, even over the engine noise, even through the armor. The Firefly commander didn't aim for the kill. He aimed for the track. Drive sprocket. Fire. The round hit the drive mechanism. The Panther slewed hard and stopped, blocking what was left of the lane. The crew was alive inside, trapped in an immobilized machine, but alive. The commander had just sealed the 5th Panther's coffin with the 4th Panther's body. The 5th tank couldn't advance, couldn't reverse. The burning wrecks behind filled the lane. Its turret was trying to traverse around the bulk of the immobilized 4th Panther, searching for the gun that was killing them. For 3 seconds, the turret was exposed. The loader rammed the last round home. His hands were bleeding now. He didn't notice. Final target. When you have it. The gunner held his breath. Fire. The round hit the 5th Panther in the engine compartment. Fire spread forward, slow, almost gentle. Nobody emerged. 1449 hours, 5 Panthers, 12 minutes. Inside the Firefly, nobody cheered. The turret was filled with propellant smoke. The 17-pounder vented gases badly. The crew was half blind and coughing. The loader sat on the turret floor, arms shaking, staring at nothing. His forearms were striped with burns from hot brass casings. Outside, the lead Panther was fully engulfed. Ammunition cooking off. Secondary explosions every few seconds, each one a dull thump felt through the ground. Nobody was getting out of that one. From the 4th Panther, the one with the destroyed track, 2 crewmen emerged and ran for the hedgerow. They weren't armed. No, they weren't a threat. The 5th Panther burned quieter. No one emerged. 300 meters of lane, roughly 330 yards. 5 columns of black smoke rising into a blue Normandy sky. The radio call went out. Voice flat, professional. 5 enemy tanks destroyed. No friendly casualties. Awaiting orders. The acknowledgement came back clipped. Then silence. Then the birds again. The after-action report was 3 paragraphs. It noted, 5 times Panther tanks destroyed. No friendly casualties. 6 rounds 17-pounder ammunition expended. 6 rounds, not 5. The miss made it into the ammunition count, but not into the narrative. After-action reports don't record fear. They don't record the shell that passed 6 inches over your turret. They don't record the sound of a German commander screaming directions through his hatch while the lane filled with fire. They don't record the 3 hours the crew spent afterward, sitting in their position, watching the smoke rise, waiting for reinforcements that never came. Some things don't fit in reports. 19 German tankers were in those 5 Panthers. How many died? How many crawled into the hedgerows? Nobody counted. They don't appear in any book you'll find. 19. That number is real. A like helps these stories reach people who should hear them. If this is the kind of history that matters to you, subscribe. The Germans didn't try that lane again. For 4 hours, nothing moved in the bocage around Lingèvres. The remaining Panthers, 3 more had been trailing the column, retreated toward Caen. The mathematics were being recalculated. Here's what the myth got wrong. The Sherman death trap narrative came mostly from post-war memoirs, written by veterans who survived precisely because their tanks were hit, and they got out. The crews who didn't get out weren't available to write books. The statistical bias is obvious in retrospect, but it shaped public understanding for decades. The truth is messier. A single Firefly positioned correctly had broken a Panzer column. Not because the Firefly was superior. The Panther was still better armored, still better armed at range, but because the crew understood something German doctrine hadn't anticipated. In the bocage, range didn't matter. Position mattered. Patience mattered. And fear, the kind of fear that comes from knowing your armor is paper and your gun is the only thing keeping you alive. That fear made you sharp. The Panther crews trusted their machine. They believed the spec sheet. They rolled into that lane with the confidence of men driving the apex predator. The Firefly crew didn't trust their machine. They knew it was a death trap with a cannon strapped to it. And that absolute clarifying terror made them better. Did your grandfather serve in a tank crew? A lot of our viewers carry these stories. A round that jammed, an order that arrived late, a position held longer than anyone expected. If that's you, tell us in the comments. We read them. The engagement didn't change the war by itself. Wars don't turn on 12 minutes, except when they do. And if they'd broken through that day, if they'd split the British lines, the Normandy beachhead could have been contained for months. Every Panther burned in a hedgerow fight was a Panther that wouldn't defend the Seine crossings. Every crew killed was a crew that wouldn't train replacements. The Firefly was supposed to be a stopgap. 1 in 4 Shermans, fitted with a gun that could actually hurt German armor, sprinkled through squadrons for anti-tank support. What Lingèvres proved, what dozens of identical engagements proved, was that the stopgap had become the strategy. The Shermans weren't supporting the Firefly. The Firefly was the only thing standing between them and extinction. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't planned, it was what worked. The crew never received a Victoria Cross. The engagement was too small, too routine, and too easily lost in the larger chaos of Normandy. Just another action report in a filing cabinet. Somewhere in the British archives, a recommendation sits in a folder that was never opened. The crew went back to their squadron the next morning. Nobody mentioned it again. The Firefly that killed 5 Panthers was itself destroyed 3 weeks later. Different crew, same thin armor, a different lane, a different Panther, a turret that traversed just fast enough. 12 minutes, 5 Panthers, 6 rounds, 1 lane in Normandy that still exists, overgrown now, quiet. The stone foundations of the barn are still there, if you know where to look. Farmers still turn up shell fragments in the fields when they plow. The hedgerows are still there. Next time on Wars and Myths, Arnhem, the bridge they couldn't hold, and the warning nobody believed. Make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss it.